I don't know. Something about this doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm in a dream. Wait a minute. I'm doing a review on my underwear? This is my worst nightmare. Or maybe it's yours. Hit the button. Let's get started. Hey there, hi there, ho there, Andrew here, the horror host of Generations X, Y, and Z inside Davis Manor, and it is my birthday today, June 1st. Happy to me. And normally you would think that I'd take the day off and I'd go and celebrate my 21st birthday. Again, for like the 20th time. But no. Here I am ushering in the month of nightmares. Because when you get to be my age, birthdays tend to be a nightmare, I guess you could say. But before we begin, let me pause for self-promotion. You can go ahead and check out that link there. That is the original review, recap, and react that I did of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Basically, it is me going through the entire movie and recapping and giving me my own spin and some jokes and stuff while I do it. But I'd also like to give a big old shout out to the patrons of the channel. It is with their help that I can make these videos, and if you'd like to know more about being a patron or how you can earn cool rewards like behind the scenes stuff, free merchandise, be part of the creative process, then check out the links. Or also if you just want to go ahead and, pledge your support because you like seeing what you're seeing and you want to help support the channel. And by the way, this is the best way to help grow the channel is to do that. Then go ahead, check out the links above or the links at the end of the video and the link at the description down below. Now, finally, as we are about to get started, one more big old shout out goes to Cameron Lutz. That is right. He is providing all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies for us to watch, and you too can get a big old shout out yourself. All you have to do is send me a film to review, and all you have to do is check out my P.O. Box information in the About section of the channel. So, let's get started with the man of your dreams, no, not me, Freddy Krueger, in the one movie that he was actually scary. A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street was written and directed by Wes Craven, produced by Robert Shea, starring Heather Langenkamp as the lead Nancy, John Saxon as her dad, Lieutenant Donald Thompson, Ronnie Blakely as her mom, Marge Thompson, and introduced a new actor to film by the name of Johnny Depp, who played Nancy's boyfriend, Glenn. Yes, A Nightmare on Elm Street is where Johnny Depp made his feature film debut. Can you believe it? And also there are a couple other actors that snuck their way in there that you might recognize. There's Lynn Shay. She is probably best known for her roles in the Insidious franchise. Or Charles Fleischer, or is it Fleischer? I don't know how to say his last name, but he's the voice of Roger Rabbit. The story of this movie is fairly straightforward when it comes to slashers. You have a group of teens that are being threatened by an antagonist, and this was originally pitched back in 1981, which is the year that this movie takes place. But it did not get picked up for another 3 years when a studio that was so desperate to get a movie to make money decided to chance it because they were going bankrupt. And that studio was New Line Cinema. And boy, this flick made some serious money for New Line Cinema back in the day. See, A Nightmare on Elm Street had about a $1.8 million budget, and it made that back opening weekend when it came out in November 1984, and then made roughly around $25 million domestically at the box office when it was done. Now, the question is why was it released in November 9th of 1984? Why didn't it come out like maybe the weekend before Halloween, the ideal time for a horror movie to come out? Well, I'll give you the answer on that. Because there was this little film called The Terminator that came out October 26, 1984. So yeah, it probably wasn't a good idea to have A Nightmare on Elm Street go right up against The Terminator. I think they knew that that was going to be a blockbuster hit anyways. So they pushed it back a little bit. So does that mean they didn't have any competition when they came out November 9th? No, they had another horror movie they had to go against, and that was Silent Night, Deadly Night. And then also the following week, there was a movie that was called Night of the Comet that came out. And speaking of Night of the Comet, let me pause for self-promotion. You can go ahead and click the link above there. That is my review of Night of the Comet. Oh, Yes, 1984 was actually a really great year for movies, and the slasher craze was in full effect, and that is also the reason why New Line Cinema has the nickname of the house that Freddy built, because basically that movie saved it from going under. Now, this movie starts with 15-year-old Tina Gray, played by 23-year-old Amanda Wyss. You know, Wyss. Kind of sounds like Miss. What were you thinking? And Tina has a nightmare about Krueger, with him slashing at her, only to find out that her nightgown has been slashed too. Now, this is a concept that I truly love. I really do, because you have a bad guy that is hunting you down in a part that you're most vulnerable. It's your dreams. You have nowhere to go. It isn't like you can just stop sleeping. I mean, if you don't want to get eaten by Jaws, you don't go into the water. You don't want to be killed by Freddy. Good luck not sleeping. As the movie progresses, there are some kills that are inventive and memorable, and because of that, they are reproduced in the reboot of the film, but let's not get into that. I'll wait until we get to that movie before I start talking about how they CGI'd everything like crazy. Here, however, it's the 1980s, and we are talking about practical effects. Tina and Glenn's death had a production crew make a room where they could rotate it, thus giving anti-gravity effects. Side note, over 500 gallons of fake blood was used in the making of this film. And getting back to this story where Tina had a nightmare, she tells her friends about it, and they are planning to have a sleepover while Tina's mom is out of town. Her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Rod, shows up to the sleepover as well so he can do his on-again, off-again with Tina. It still blows me away realizing that these characters range from 15 to 17 years old, and we just saw the 15-year-old do the deed. Ugh. And post-coitus, Tina got killed. So you can wash away that guilt, I guess. But Freddy's aftermath goes ahead and makes it look like Rod, the boyfriend, is the killer. But a little bit later in the movie, Rod is killed while at the police station, with Freddy hanging him with a bed sheet, making it look like suicide. And I have to say something about this. I really do enjoy when Freddy goes ahead and kills somebody, and then he makes it look like a suicide or an accident. It makes him seem more dangerous. He becomes more of the boogeyman there, because you got people trying to point him out, but they can't do it. They have no proof. So that type of stuff just writes itself, in my opinion. And unfortunately, that seems to go further away as the movie goes on. During the time Nancy and Glenn are trying to save Rod because they saw Freddy in the dream world, I can say that I really enjoyed the subtleness of what is a dream and what isn't with the cinematography that Jacques Haitkin did. I hope I'm saying that guy's name right. Anyways, the blend of the cinematography that Jacques Haitkin did, all while wearing an eye patch, by the way, because he didn't want to be distracted with anything else that was going on the set. I don't know if too many cinematographers do that, but hey, okay. And then the music that is done by Charles Bernstein, maybe it's Bernstein, I don't know. Anyways, that music with the visuals gave this sense of foreboding and uneasiness in the movie when it really came to watching it. I think it kind of put you on the edge of your seat. You weren't quite sure what was going to happen next, and I liked that. But more about the uneasiness in just a moment. During a sleep study, Nancy wakes up bringing Freddy's hat into the real world, and she realizes that if she holds him while she wakes, she can bring him into the real world and defeat him once and for all. And I say kudos to this, I really do. We don't need to know that much about an antagonist other than two things here. We need to know what is their motivation and how they can be stopped. And therefore, when we know those two things, we know what the protagonist has to do. They have to stop the antagonist from accomplishing their goal, and they have to defeat the antagonist by the way that they have to be stopped. And speaking of antagonists here, we have by far one of the greatest antagonists, I think, out there, and he only had around 7 minutes of screen time in this movie. There is no doubt in my mind that Robert Englund did a fantastic job as Freddy Krueger in this movie. He played the right amount of creep. He played he just had the right presence, really, on the screen. But this character of Freddy Krueger was developed way before Robert Englund even signed on to the film. Freddy Krueger was named after someone that Wes Craven actually feared. There was a bully in his school back in the day, and his name was Fred Krueger. And also, might I point out that a burn victim is one of the hardest for people to look at, because there's just this uneasiness of looking at the deformity of a burn victim. So naturally, Freddy being a burn victim is a good fit. And Freddy's gloves is based off of a primitive fear, just being clawed and ripped apart by wild animals. Side note, as I had said, Wes Craven had put so much thought into this antagonist, like naming him after a school bully of Wes, but this was not the first time that he used the bully's name. When Wes Craven teamed up with Sean S. Cunningham from Friday the 13th to make a movie that was called Last House on the Left, the main bad guy's name was Krug. Oh, the more you know. So getting back to Freddy here, Fred's fedora came from a 10-year-old's perspective of Wes Craven. He saw a homeless man through the window going through some trash, and the old man looked up at him and just scared Wes, and I guess emotionally scarred him so much that years later it went into a script. So also the colors that Fred Krueger is wearing, or Freddy Krueger, he's kind of named Fred Krueger in the movie. The sequels he's named Freddy, but he wears red and green stripes on the sweater. Mind you, in this one the sleeves are red, but in the sequels everything is striped. It's weird. Anyways, the red and green colors come from like a colorblind test. It's basically red and green opposites kind of make your eyes feel a little bit awkward in there. So since it was unsettling for the eye to kind of focus on those colors, that's why they chose it, not because it was Christmas colors or anything like that. So yeah, Freddy basically had quite the history as a character before the film was even shot. And speaking of the film being shot, it only took 30 days to film this. Later in the film, Nancy's mom, Marge, states through some exposition that Fred Krueger was arrested for being a child murderer and was left off on a technicality where the parents of the neighborhood killed him in a street justice vigilante mob. Now see, this is pretty good to know because we already knew how to defeat Freddy earlier, but now we know what his motivation is for being killed by the parents who wanted their children to be safe and not killed from Freddy Krueger. That didn't really make much sense. But anyways, why this movie is not called Freddy's Revenge like the sequel is beyond me, because revenge is the angle of this movie. Now, knowing how to defeat Krueger, Nancy goes ahead and booby traps the house that would make Kevin McAllister cry in shame and puts her alcoholic mother to bed. And I get why Nancy's mom, Marge, is an alcoholic. The burden of being one of the ones that killed Krueger has taken its toll. In a previous script, she's actually the one that gives the death blow. But in the final product, we never really get to see that. And I feel that maybe Marge might have been the one that led this endeavor, and Lieutenant Donald Thompson was probably the one that cleaned it up since he was a police officer, or is a police officer. And this is probably what led to a strain in their relationship, leading them to be separated and then divorced. So it is my theory here that Nancy has been asleep well before she puts her mom to sleep and Glenn gets killed. Actually, I believe the whole last half an hour of the film is one big giant dream. Nancy thinks that she can pull Freddy out of the dream world and into the real world, and then she runs around and away from him, and he triggers all the booby traps like he's Wile E. Coyote or something, and then he catches on fire. He eventually then jumps on top of Marge Thompson, I almost said Marge Simpson, who is asleep in her bed, and then he smothers her in flames. She catches on fire. Nancy and Lieutenant Thompson go ahead and throw a blanket on them both to put the fire out, and then pull the blanket away, and you get this. Which is a little weird, to be honest. But Lieutenant Thompson says nothing about the floating corpse that goes ahead and blends into the bed, and then there's nothing there. Which should be a good sign that you are dreaming, because any rational lieutenant of the police force would be like, "What is that?" And that didn't happen. So yeah, Nancy is still dreaming, and in a dream that is being run by Krueger, in my opinion. So Freddy comes back through the bed. Again, something that you would see in a dream. But Nancy goes ahead and says to Krueger that he has no power over her, which is a scene that only could be better, I guess, if you watched Sarah say it to Jareth in Labyrinth 2 years later. This, of course, makes Freddy disappear, and we are given an ending that producer Robert Shea wanted, not Wes Craven, where it seems like Freddy won and is still tormenting Nancy and friends. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street, quite possibly one of the best, well thought out and horror stories ever. I will go out on the record and say that. This is not my favorite franchise, but this here movie rocks. It really does. We have a boogeyman that is out there who's trying to kill children. Not trying, he is, really. And he's got these primal weapons of like slashing and everything. And he wants revenge against the parents that killed him. But he doesn't go after the parents. He goes after the children, which is even better because that's his MO anyways. And Robert Englund has the right scares in this. He does the character justice. The supporting characters and the supporting cast are strong. They're strong characters. They're likable. You're empathic with them. You feel for them. They feel like real people. And the actors do a really good job, whether it's the teens or the parents on there. There are a few moments, I will say, that Ronnie Blakely make me cringe with her acting. But all in all, good performances from the supporting cast. And Heather Langenkamp, very strong female lead. She's only 20 years old when this movie came out. There's actually a scene in it where she feels like she looks so old, and she says in the mirror, "Oh, I look like I'm 20," which I think is pretty funny. But she is a strong female lead, and she has really good chemistry with Englund's Kruger, which is odd because they don't really have a lot of screen time together. But you feel that. You feel there's this connection between the two of them, and there's this animosity that Heather has towards Kruger. And did I say Heather or did I say Nancy? I don't know. That happens. Sometimes you blend them, but you don't really blend them until A New Nightmare anyways. So really, the images that are in the film, the sound effects, the music, all of it gives the right amount of eeriness, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything. Other than the ending is a little bit confusing, the story and the screenplay is pretty solid. It's a good tale, and it would keep anybody awake. Be honest. This movie is completely purchase worthy, in my opinion. It should be in anybody's library. Whether you are a huge horror fan or not, this is something that you have to buy. So do you agree with me or disagree with me? Go ahead, leave a comment down below, and remember, like, share, subscribe, plus hit that bell icon so you get notified the moment I upload, and I will see you